If you're finding yourself really reclusive during awakening, perhaps craving a lot of solitude and being called a hermit by people around you, then this video is for you. You're going to find some helpful content. And while there is quite a bit of content out on social media and on YouTube, regarding the kind of awakening hermit mode, a lot of this focuses on the idea of starting to move away from low vibe or low consciousness people. And I think this is a really mistaken way of viewing it. I think that, this is a part of our sort of spiritual ego process, and why that view might present itself early on in our stages of kind of withdrawing from the society or the ways in which we interacted before. This perspective changes quite significantly throughout our process. So I'm going to deal with some of those shifts and changes in perspective, as well as my own experience in this video. And hopefully it will be really helpful to you if you're experiencing this kind of solitudinous energy. And it makes a lot of sense to want to spend time alone when we're in a process of transformation or metamorphosis. But as I've dealt with in many of my other videos, the awakening process isn't necessarily one that ends. And so if we're viewing this as kind of like a phase that we're going through, that may not actually be the case for you. It really depends on the individual and depends on how it expresses itself. The way it's expressed itself in my own process is that during kind of the early stages of the main part of my awakening, I definitely found myself feeling quite awkward and strange during social interactions. And while this has some crossovers with concepts around neurodivergence, and I'm going to deal with neurodiversity in a video on awakening a little bit later on. That's been a request made by one of my viewers. But just for the time being, there is this kind of like overlap in particular social experiences and social manifestations. So, I was quite a lively personality and someone that really enjoyed going to parties and kind of dressing up and getting just like super involved with new conversations and new people. And a part of this, of course, was conditioning around the idea of like, that's how I should be in the world. But part of it was also a shift in myself that was occurring around this time, say like 8 to 10 years ago, where if I was at a party, I began kind of tuning into the more subtle layers of energetics that was occurring. And I was finding it very difficult to actually stay focused on the conversation or the story that people were telling me, because I was noticing the subtleties or the nuances of their presentation of themselves, of their body language, of their tone. I was kind of tuning into where there might be misrepresentation of what they were actually saying, because there were other signs that something else was going on underneath. So this sensitivity in social situations made it very difficult to be in kind of like high energy party based atmospheres, because the input of information literally kind of undercut my ability to engage socially, because there was just so much information coming in and an inability to kind of like keep track of everything that was unfolding on a surface level, on the level of like actually meeting new people and being able to express myself. And then another kind of layer of this experience as well is that because my kind of like self-identity was breaking down and I was seeing myself in new ways and disidentifying with a lot of story, I sort of felt like I didn't really know how to present myself anymore. And so when people asked me about my life, it was almost like anything that I could tell them felt like such a reduction of the reality of who I really was, of this kind of expansive awareness that I was beginning to tap into, that it became very difficult to to express myself, to kind of explain, this is who I am. Because any statement about who I was a misrepresentation. It wasn't the wholeness of the truth. And it felt like a kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Like I was misrepresenting myself if I was to actually, make that reduction. So this was another layer of kind of interacting in social environments and trying to express myself in those environments. And then there was also a very natural reduction in the desire to interact as well, that there was a richness coming through in being in very quiet spaces, in being with our more than human kin, where a tree or a cat or even the wall, a nicely textured wall, was just as interesting and engaging for me as being with a person. And so the amount of time that I wanted to dedicate to being with other people just naturally declined. And one of the things that's quite challenging about this experience during an awakening process is the way that it affects our relationships, because we might very much love and care for and want to continue being connected to people in our lives. They might see these shifts and changes in the way that we are as a symbol of our lack of care. It's very difficult to be in a relationship with someone who wants constant engagement when we value a lot of spaciousness. And so there's nothing particularly wrong with wanting a lot of engagement. There's nothing wrong with wanting a lot of spaciousness. It's just a mismatch in connectivity, in the things that we desire and value in a relationship. And so for me, I started to notice that a lot of friendships were dropping away. And this was not a representation of like higher consciousness, lower consciousness, or these false hierarchies that our spiritual ego wants to construct. It was literally just a mismatch in values and desires in a relationship. And in my romantic connections to this started becoming a point of contention. I remember a particular relationship where I was going through a stage that meditation first thing in the morning felt really important to me. It was really essential for that part of my process, that I begin my day with this sense of solitude, internal noticing, and spaciousness, quiet. And my partner at the time was not on board with this. They really struggled with the idea that, they might be present in the same space as me, but we weren't engaging. So, this eventually led to our separation, because I was quite happy and content engaging in like parallel activities, meaning one person doing one thing and one person doing another thing in the same space, and feeling the shared sense of presence without necessarily directly being in contact. And they were really interested in co-play or co-engagement and ensuring that all the activities whilst we were in presence together were shared activities. So again, I think it's important that we view this not through the lens of higher consciousness or high vibes versus low vibes. And the reason for that is that it constructs a false hierarchy of consciousness. It starts to view this unfolding awakening as an individual process, which it's not. Awakening is about our coming into the realization of unity or oneness in diversity, and that our diverse experiences or expressions of consciousness are valid and meaningful and important parts of awakening as an ongoing process. And those tensions or challenges that we come up against in relationship as a part of awakening are absolutely, you know, a part of and integral aspects of our awakening process. If we don't meet tension, then there's no friction to kind of wear away at the residual individualized ego selves that we have present. So the part of me that sees the other person's way of engaging as wrong or somehow less than or not as evolved as is ego. It is my individualistic self expressing itself rather than that unified consciousness that recognizes awareness as imbuing and arising from all things, that all things are awareness, including the person that I might consider to be less conscious than I am. It's just laughable once you kind of move into certain layers of this reality. Those perspectives of higher consciousness, lower consciousness just break down. They make no sense anymore. So this is kind of a large part of what hermit mode represents, is just beginning to value awareness and consciousness in all things. We're not so anthropocentric. We're not so human focused in our perspective of what's interesting, what is a person, what is alive. We can start to see the aliveness in the moss and the tree branch, and even in the buildings or the cars. There's a vibrancy to life that no longer requires this constant human feedback. And it's beautiful. It's really enjoyable. And so when we look at like the progression or the unfolding, non-hierarchical progression, so the unfolding of this sort of hermit mode of awakening, this is where it starts to become a little bit more individual in the way that it expresses itself. That for some people, actually going into that sense of solitude is more of an ongoing experience. For myself, I haven't really kind of re-entered into a space of high social ability. And I certainly find it more enjoyable to be in my solitude in the human sense, and kind of absorb the energetic awareness that's permeating the beings around me, the environment around me. And so, it's okay if this is the nature of things for you. I do have a partner, and my partnership with them is very much one that values parallel process, that we're both people who are quite happy to read a book or meditate or be in our own process in togetherness, that we don't need to kind of communicate all of the time. Although our communication when we do that is very clear and very honest, and we make sure that we communicate about the essential things. We're not sort of suppressing or pushing away the things that we need to have a harmonious relationship. But for other people, there is a re-entry into the social realm that, it is more of a kind of a part of their process of unfolding rather than an ongoing state. And so it might be a period of time of months or years or even decades of deep solitude, and then a re-entry into the world. A really wonderful, quite kind of clear example of this is folks who go into solo retreat, who maybe spend up to 3 years completely alone, just doing practice, just engaging in that deep, deep, deep spiritual awareness. And then they re-enter the world with a great deal of energetic force to teach and to connect with people and to be deeply involved in social projects or community development. And they've kind of drawn all of this energy from that solitudinous space in order for it to be redirected into a highly social experience. So it's absolutely an individual undertaking. And I think the main thing that's a real challenge for folks, and when I kind of coach people through certain processes in their lives, I do some one-on-one work with people who are kind of in some sort of a process, whether they call it a spiritual awakening or not. And one of the challenges that they often come up against, and I certainly came up against, is this sense of like, there is something wrong with me. I should be able to connect with other people. I should be able to be social. And certainly for myself, you know, when this was first beginning to express itself, there were quite a few people around me who viewed it as a symptom of depression or a symptom of some sort of psychological challenge. And yes, there was a lot of kind of emotional challenge and emotional difficulty that I was going through as well. But what I discovered over time was actually the solitude aspect of it was one of the things that was holding and nourishing and helping to heal that trauma and that emotional process. So we need to be able to discern between kind of healthy solitude and unhealthy withdrawal. And this discernment generally comes from the sense of like, is there an avoidance strategy going on? Is there a clear sense of aversion to other people? And this is the like really interesting overlap, right, between this story that we've got in spiritual culture around I have to stop associating with low vibe or low consciousness people, and avoidance or aversion to things. Because I believe, at least, that a truly awakened consciousness is someone that is able to be with all manner of people, all manner of situations, all manner of experiences, without entering into this judgmental, hierarchized image of what's going on. So if we find ourselves falling into that story, that actually might be a sign that we are using solitude as an avoidance strategy, that we're actually expressing aversion to things as opposed to a genuine spiritual unfolding through solitude. This is one of the litmus tests. Yeah, I think I might leave it there for today. Just ending on that sense of discernment for you. So if you're finding this content really useful, please hit subscribe. It helps my videos get out to other people who will also gain some value out of it. And if you are a regular subscriber, I would love to hear what your experience of solitude, hermit mode in awakening is. Tell me all about it. And I will see you next time.